Alright you guys, so we're gonna get started on this first block, and this is block 8, and I need to make 8 of these blocks. I have all my instructions here, and I've already cut all my paper piecing pieces, and I do cut my paper piecing pieces all along the edge of the dotted line. There are 48 blocks in this quilt, but I'm going to use only 4 of these paper piecing pieces because I'm not going to sew directly to the paper piece because I don't like ripping it off. So, and I'll show you that later. So I have 4 of each piece. I already have all my pieces, and I'd rather do like cut all the pieces for one block, that way I don't get overwhelmed, because as you can see, this block has a lot of pieces and it looks like this. One of them, they do change, you know, in different places, but they are, like I mentioned, a lot of pieces. The other thing that I did different is this is the centerpiece. So what I did is I put a little glue on the back and got this fabric. It was 5 by 5, and I put it back to the back of the paper, to the back of the fabric, and then I went ahead and cut exactly how this paper piece indicates, even notching this little end, the little tips. So now I have all my pieces ready, and I'm ready to sew, and I'm going to do like chain piecing all these pieces, so that way I can finish faster because it has a lot of pieces. Alright, so for section C, you're gonna need the C1, C2, C3, and C4 fabrics. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with these. And you're gonna make 4 blocks. So you need 4 of each piece if you're gonna do 4 blocks. So I'm gonna put this aside for now. And so I get my little glue, and as you can see, I have used this one a lot. I get my little glue. I put a little bit, not too much, because I want this to come out, you know, to get detached easily. So this is how much I have, not too much. Turn my fabric wrong side up with this one, and I kind of put it like in an angle. So I press it so that it can get attached, and now don't pull it too hard. So it's attached good enough that the paper will stay. If you want it a little bit more, then you can add a little bit more glue. And now I'm going to go ahead and fold this part, which I've already done so many of them that this thing is already folding where it needs to fold. So I fold it, I get my added quarter, and I cut this part. Now with these parts, I'm going to show you what I'm making now. Put that aside, and then we're going to go ahead and grab C2, which I have right here. And you're going to put it right sides together. And I've already experimented a lot with the measurements, so the ones that are in the pattern are the ones that I ended up having. So I'm going to hold this really tight with my hands. I'm not going to put any glue or anything on it, and I'm going to take it to the machine. Alright you guys, I'm getting ready to sew. And on any other paper piecing, the regular paper piecing, you'll be sewing your stitch right on this line. And I'm not going to do that like I mentioned, because I don't want to have to rip that paper. So I have my other piece. The piece that is C2 is already right sides together. There it is. And so I'm going to sew this with, I'm going to put my presser foot right on the edge with the fabric. And that's what I'm going to look at. I'm really not going to be looking at my needle or my paper. I'll go and sew this, and that's it. And then I'll go and do the other one. As you can see, it's black fabric, but you can see it. I mean, not black fabric, black thread. So you can see right here the thread, and it's not attached to this paper. All that it has is the glue. So that's the one thing. This part over here needs to be really glued from all the places, so it will not shift while you're doing all this sewing, because then your seams are not going to fall in place where you want them to. So now I'm going to go and press. So I had my piece sewn like that on the edge, and I already pressed it, so it looks like this. So then I turn it again back on its back, and since I've already used this paper a few times, I just have to turn it like this to make the other cut. That was my C2 piece. So now I just turn it like this. I don't have to put my little plastic anymore. I don't have to put this anymore like this and turn it, because it's already been used a few times, so it remembers that that's where it needs to fold. Then I cut like that. Now I have my 1/4 of an inch, and I need to put C3, which is this one right here. This out of the way. So we put C3 right there, and then I'm gonna go and do the other stitch, which is right here. So I already attached my C3, and I pressed it open. So now it looks like that. So now the piece looks like this. Now I'm gonna do C4. So I turn this way. I put my add a 1/4, and I trim this excess fabric, and I use these little scraps for other little projects. So now I get my C4 piece, put it right here, put it right in here, and make sure that this end over here gets covered, and this one over here too. So now I have my little piece centered. Now I put some clips because I don't want it to move. Put some clips right here, here, and here, and we go stitch. We're going to attach C4, and then we're going to trim it so you'll see what it looks like. Making sure this part over here doesn't matter, because this part is the one I'm looking at. I'm following this part over here. This one I just placed it a little bit towards this way, but that's okay because I made it big enough. So now I have this, and if I get if I notice that the stitch is way too this way, I can go and do it again so that it goes right where I want it. See? Kind of got off track a little bit there, but then I can go over and make a second stitch a little bit closer. Okay, there you go. And that just sometimes it happens, but that's okay, because you can go ahead, you cannot fix it if it's too close. You're gonna have to rip it. So if you just make it a little bit, you know, away from the paper too much, then you just put it, do it again like I just did. So now I'm done with this piece, and as you can see, I had to do another little stitch over there, but that's okay, not a big deal. You're probably gonna have to do that too once in a while, because that just happens sometimes. We just try not to catch the paper, and then we make it too far away from the paper. So but go over it again and you'll be fine. So that's already done. I've already pressed this piece. When you open it up, you're supposed to have fabric sticking from all sides. And so now we're going to trim all around it. Alright, so now I'm going to trim the whole piece. And the way I do this is, instead of following this line, because that line gets trimmed as you cut through this paper, through the fabric, I go with the 1/4 of an inch and I put it on this line. So I align those 2/4 of an inch right here, and that's how I trim. Sometimes you cut paper and sometimes you don't, but as long as you have your 1/4, if you put it right there, you're always going to have your 1/4 of an inch. Trim that. Put it over here. And trim. And then this part over here, which is the longer part, is a little out of frame. Let me see if, there we go. Then you put it right here. Trim. And then the last piece. Last piece right here, you all. And so after I'm done with that, I go ahead and do these little notches right here. Make sure that they are just like the paper is indicating. Even if it's a little piece, you have to trim that, because that's going to help us later with the alignment of the fabric. And so then you have a piece that looks like this. So we are done with that, and then we're going to do the rest, and then we're going to have a nice little block. So after we're done with our little piece, I forgot to mention that all you have to do is remove it from the paper, and you're done with your paper. With this, you can reuse for the next block. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the block together so you can see how it goes together. And I don't use the paper piecing or anything to put it together. It goes together pretty quickly. Some of the blocks I use black thread and some I use white thread, and when I first started I used the white thread, so that's probably the one you're gonna see, but it's better the black thread because it doesn't come through none of these pieces. So I'm gonna go show you how I put those blocks together. Alright you guys, I'm ready to assemble this block, and I have all my pieces. This is fabric E, and like I mentioned, I went ahead and put the back of fabric E, of the paper piecing E1, put it on its back, and then I put the wrong side of my fabric to the wrong side of the paper piecing, and I trim exactly like the paper piece. Even the notches, I did it exactly like that because we're going to need that for making our sewing easier. So these are the pieces that go together. So the first piece we are going to sew is going to be this one. This one is C1. So I'm going to put C1, and of course the wider part goes to the bottom of the block. So you put it like that with the little notch touching the little end, and then you sew like 2 inches from the center of the block this way, back stitching over here a little bit so it won't get loose. And it looks like that. but that's okay. Then you open it like that, you press it if you want, and then you go ahead and put the second piece, which is this one, and then you turn this piece like this. Of course, putting it right here on the edge, and this is going to be shorter because it's going to have this seam over here going to overlap like this, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, and then we're going to sew this one right here. You do 1/4 inch, and that's going to go like that. Then this one is the third one, 1, 2, and this is the third one we are going to sew. That goes like that. Then this one is going to be the final one that goes like this. And that's how your block comes together. So then, since we are going to start sewing from here, you can move this out of the way so that you can sew this like that. So now I'm going to sew this block and show you a piece at a time so you can see how it's done. Alright, so the first piece that I'm going to sew is this two. Then I just move these aside so I know which ones go next. And just like I was mentioning, I know that I already did this, but I didn't show you how I sew this together. I just place this like right on the edge, and with this little tip right here touching that little side, the edge. And I start about 2 inches away from this part over here. Little back stitch. Now I press this with this side. I'll show you. I press it like that. It's easier when you're going to sew the other part. So now that it's pressed, make sure that it's straight, and then we put this section, and we go like this. And I have these little tweezers that I use to move this fabric around. And it goes right up to here. This tip right here is the one that has to touch this end. So just like that. And we're gonna sew the same with the presser foot, the edge of the presser foot touching the fabric. Just like that. And then we open and we press. I'm going to be pressing all of these with the fabric towards the sashing, which I'm calling this the sashing. So it's just like this. See? So it should be like, everything should be straight. Now we put the top part right here the same way, like that, and your scant 1/4 inch. Make sure you're catching all the fabric. Fix the seam if it wants to go the other way. And we're almost done. So we press it over here now. So now it's pressed. Now we're going to go ahead and add the last little piece. Move this out of the way. place your little fabric like that. And if this wants to stick out a little bit, it's okay, let it be. I'm still going to sew on the edge of the top of the fabric. I'm going to press it open. So this part over here is why I mentioned to sew this seam over here towards the inside, because we are going to be sewing it like this. So if you press it towards the other side, it's a little bit more difficult to sew it. So, and then I press this part before I sew because it's just easier. And I'm going to back stitch here. And that's it, we have a block. I'm going to press, and you should have all your little ends aligned. I'm so happy with these blocks, oh my goodness. They are coming out so nicely. So cute. So after you're done with the sewing, your little block should be 9 inches all the way around, because the pieces that we cut them like with the paper piecing, so that you should get the same size block every time. This one I gotta press a little bit more this way, and it will be the 9 inches. So press them good, but don't press them too, like pushing it, because all of these are bias edges and they will be distorted. So just press instead of ironing. And now I have to go make quite a few more blocks. Alright you guys, so I've been marking, and after you mark for a little while you kind of get the hang of it. And so I'm going to just put it like that, and I'm not marking this one. Then when I get to here, to this point, is when I align them really, really well. Make sure they're pretty square. And that they're going to align there good. Over that seam, and then I come and check this seam and position it where it needs to go. Remember, all of these are on a bias, so it's just they get all stretchy and stuff. Let's see what it looks like. See, they come out pretty good. So that's another way you can do it, which is just eyeballing it, and they come out pretty good. So now that later I'm gonna go ahead and do those rows and put them together, and my top is almost done. Alright you guys, after sewing all my blocks together, that's the way the quilt looks, the quilt top. Now I'm going to add the borders, and I just love the feeling that you get when you finish a quilt top. So satisfying. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and add those borders now.